The stars looked cold and distant from the observation deck of the UES Vengeance. Captain Thomas Reed stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the twisted metal remains of what had once been the pride of the alien fleet. The collective flagship, now nothing but floating debris against the backdrop of space. "It's finally over," he whispered to himself, though he didn't quite believe it. The war had lasted 6 terrible years. Earth and its colonies had survived, but the cost had been enormous. 2 billion dead, 12 worlds with surfaces scorched beyond recognition. The once mighty human fleet reduced to less than a third of its former strength. Thomas ran a hand through his short gray hair. At 45, he had spent nearly his entire adult life in the military, but nothing had prepared him for the brutality of this conflict. The collective had appeared without warning at the edge of human space, their strange biomechanical ships unlike anything humans had ever seen. "Captain," a voice called from behind him. Thomas turned to see Lieutenant Anna Wilson approaching. His executive officer was 32, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a mind that worked like a tactical computer. Her uniform was perfectly pressed despite the fact that neither of them had slept in over 48 hours. "Lieutenant," Thomas acknowledged, "what brings you here instead of getting some well-deserved rest?" Anna's face was grim. She held out a secure data tablet, its screen glowing with information classified at the highest level. "Sir, intelligence just sent this over. I think you need to see it immediately." Thomas took the tablet and began reading. With each swipe of his finger across the screen, his expression grew darker. When he finished, he looked up at Anna, his blue eyes hard as ice. "Are they certain about this?" "Yes, sir. 3 separate analysis teams came to the same conclusion." Thomas looked back at the remains of the alien fleet. What he had just read changed everything. The collective shouldn't have known Earth's defense grid frequencies. They shouldn't have had the locations of the hidden colony worlds. They shouldn't have been able to bypass the automated warning systems at Jupiter. Someone had given them that information. Not just someone, many someones working together. Humans. "Traitors," Thomas said, the word tasting bitter on his tongue. "Yes, sir. And they were highly placed. Military command, colonial administration, intelligence services." Thomas handed the tablet back to Anna. "We need to inform Admiral Porter immediately." The space station Artemis hung in orbit around Earth's moon, its structure showing the scars of recent battle. Large sections were still open to space, repair crews in pressure suits working continuously to restore the damaged areas. Admiral James Porter's temporary office was located in one of the few intact sections. At 60, Porter was a living legend, the architect of the strategy that had finally turned the tide against the collective. His left arm was a prosthetic, lost during the Battle of Proxima Centauri, and a long scar ran from his right eye down to his chin. "Reed," he said as Thomas entered. "Glad you could make it. Sit down." Thomas took the offered seat. Through the office viewport, Earth was visible, blue and green and alive despite everything that had happened. "I assume you've seen the intelligence reports," Porter said. "Yes, sir. Hard to believe." Porter's weathered face showed no emotion. "Believe it. We've been betrayed by our own, and now that the war is officially over, most of those traitors think they've gotten away with it." He pressed a button on his desk and a holographic display appeared between them, showing faces and names, dozens of them, with connecting lines indicating relationships and communication patterns. "This is what we know so far," Porter explained. "The network calls itself the Ascended. They believe the collective represents the next stage of evolution, and humans should willingly join them. During the war, they provided critical information that cost us battles, ships, and lives." Thomas leaned forward, scanning the faces. Some he recognized. Military officers, politicians, scientists. "With all respect, Admiral, why are you telling me this? This looks like a matter for internal security." Porter's eyes narrowed. "Because internal security is compromised. We don't know how deep this goes or who we can trust." He waved his hand, and the hologram changed to show a ship. Sleek, fast, heavily armed despite its relatively small size. This is the Vengeance's new configuration. Officially, your ship and crew are being reassigned to post-war patrol duty. Unofficially, I'm giving you a different mission. Find these traitors. Hunt them down wherever they've scattered across the galaxy. Bring them to justice, or deliver justice yourself if necessary. Thomas felt the weight of the responsibility settling on his shoulders. Why me? Because I watched you during the war, Reed. You never compromised, never gave up, and most importantly, you were never in a position to know certain classified information that was leaked. You're one of the few I can be absolutely certain wasn't turned. Thomas nodded slowly. I'll need to choose my own team. People I trust completely. Already approved. Your XO Wilson is clean. Her family was on New Sydney when the collective hit it thanks to leaked defense plans. She has every reason to hate traitors. For the rest, use your judgment, but keep the circle small. Porter stood and walked to the viewport looking out at Earth. They think the war is over, but for you and your team it's just beginning. These traitors wouldn't just have given up their humanity for nothing. They're planning something. Find out what before... An alarm suddenly blared throughout the station. Red emergency lights began flashing. Security breach in Section 4, announced a computerized voice. Unknown hostiles detected. Porter swore, pulling a sidearm from his desk. Someone knows about this meeting. You need to get to your ship now. He tossed Thomas a data crystal. Everything we know about the traitor network is on this. Get it out of here. Thomas caught the crystal. Sir, you should come with... No. Time. I'll hold them here and lock down the secure files. Go, Captain, that's an order. Thomas hesitated only a moment before nodding sharply and heading for the door. In the corridor, chaos reigned. Station personnel ran in all directions as emergency bulkheads began to close. Thomas sprinted toward the docking bay where his shuttle waited. Halfway there, an explosion rocked the station, throwing him against a wall. He pushed himself up and continued running. When he reached the bay, Anna was waiting with 2 security officers, keeping the shuttle secure. Captain, what's happening? She asked as they hurried aboard. We've been compromised, Thomas said, showing the crystal into a secure pocket. Get us back to the Vengeance immediately. As their shuttle pulled away from the station, Thomas looked back through the viewport. A secondary explosion bloomed. From the area where Porter's office had been, fire briefly visible before the vacuum of space extinguished it. His communicator crackled with a broken transmission. Reed, they're everywhere. Trust no one. Find them all. Porter's voice, cut short by static. Thomas closed his eyes briefly, then turned to Anna. Set course for the Vengeance. We have work to do. The war against the collective was over. The hunt for the traitors had just begun. 3 months had passed since the attack on Artemis Station. The UES Vengeance drifted silently toward the space station Nova Haven, its weapons hidden and its military markings covered with the insignia of a common merchant vessel. Captain Thomas. Reed stood on the bridge watching the busy trading hub grow larger on the main screen. Nova Haven sat at the edge of what had once been collective space, a place where humans and a dozen alien species now mixed freely, exchanging goods and information. Status report, Thomas said, his voice low. Lieutenant Anna Wilson looked up from her console. All systems normal, Captain. Our disguise is holding. No signs we've been detected as a military vessel. And our target? Marcus confirms Reese's ship docked 6 hours ago. He hasn't left the station. Thomas nodded. Victor Reese had once been a senior logistics officer for Earth's defense forces. The data from Admiral Porter had identified him as a likely member of the traitor network. For weeks they had been tracking his movements, following a trail of encrypted communications that led them here. Good. Time to put our plan into action. Thomas turned to face the team he had personally selected for this mission. Marcus Lee sat at the communications station, his fingers dancing across the controls as he monitored transmissions from the station. Only 30, Marcus had a genius for decryption and signal analysis. During the war, he had broken 3 different collective communication codes. Dr. Eliza Voss stood near the tactical display, studying the station layout. A xenopsychologist, with experience studying collective behavior patterns, she had lost her husband in the Battle of Titan. Her expertise would be vital in understanding how the alien influence had affected the human traitors. "Remember," Thomas said to them all, "we're here to capture Reese alive if possible. We need what he knows." The station was crowded with beings from a dozen worlds. Humans brushed shoulders with tall, thin aliens from the Orion sectors and stocky traitors from the mining colonies. Music and conversation filled the air, along with the smell of food from various worlds. Anna moved through the crowd with practiced ease, a small weapon hidden under her jacket. She found her position on the second level of the market district, with a clear view of the meeting point Marcus had identified. "In position," she said quietly into her communicator. "Copy that," Thomas replied from his position near the main entrance. "Marcus, any update on Reese's movements?" Marcus's voice came through clearly in their earpieces. "He's left his quarters and is heading your way, not alone. I count 4 others with him, sending their images to your displays now." Thomas glanced at the small screen on his wrist. The faces of 4 men appeared, all with military bearing despite their civilian clothes. His blood ran cold as he recognized one of them. "That's Robert Green," he said. "He was reported dead at the Battle of Titan." "Confirmed," Eliza replied from her position in a small cafe across from the meeting point. "And there's something else. My scanner is picking up unusual neural patterns. They have implants of some kind." Thomas watched as Reese and his guards entered the market area. The former logistics officer looked nervous, constantly scanning his surroundings. Whatever he was here for, it was important. "Everyone hold position," Thomas ordered. "Let's see who he's meeting." For nearly an hour, Reese and his guards waited. Then a hooded figure approached them, passing something small to Reese. As they talked, Eliza's voice came through with urgency. "Captain, I can see Reese's neck from here. There's some kind of implant at the base of his skull, similar to devices found on captured collective agents." Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just collaboration, this was something worse. "Marcus, are you getting any of their conversation?" "Fragments only. Something about the Ascended and the Convergence. Wait, they've spotted me." Thomas saw one of the guards, Green, suddenly look up toward Marcus's position. The guard's hand went inside his jacket. "Cover blown, move in," Thomas shouted, drawing his weapon. The market erupted into chaos. Civilians screamed and ran as energy bolts cut through the air. Thomas dove behind a market stall as return fire came from Reese's guards. Anna's precise shots from her elevated position took down 2 of the guards. Thomas rolled out from cover and fired, hitting another in the shoulder. Green grabbed Reese and started pulling him toward an exit. Thomas sprinted after them, leaping over fallen market goods. "Stop them," he shouted to Eliza, who was positioned near the exit. Eliza stepped out, raising a neural disruptor, a non-lethal weapon designed to temporarily overload the nervous system. She fired at Reese, who dropped to the ground, convulsing. Green turned, firing wildly at Eliza. She dove for cover, but not before a bolt grazed her arm. Thomas closed the distance and tackled Green, sending them both crashing into a wall. They fought brutally, hand to hand. Green was stronger than any normal human should be, his eyes wild with fury. He managed to throw Thomas off and ran for the exit, disappearing into the panicked crowd. Thomas scrambled to his feet, gasping for breath. "Secure Reese," he ordered. Anna was already there, binding Reese's hands with restraints. The former officer was conscious but dazed from the neural disruptor. "We need to move," Marcus said, joining them. "Station security is coming." Back on the Vengeance, they held Reese in the ship's small brig. Dr. Voss had sedated him and was examining the implant at the base of his skull. "I've never seen anything exactly like this," she said, showing Thomas the scans. "It's collective technology, but modified for human neural patterns. It seems to create a connection between his mind and something else." "Can you remove it?" Thomas asked. "Not safely. It's integrated with his brainstem. Removing it would kill him." Thomas looked through the barrier at their prisoner. "How soon can you question him?" "I've developed a compound that should temporarily suppress the implant's influence. Give me an hour." The questioning revealed horrors beyond what they had imagined. Reese sat slumped in his chair, the drugs making him compliant as Eliza asked careful questions. "The Ascended," Reese said, his voice flat. "That's what we call ourselves. Not traitors. Visionaries." "What is your purpose?" Thomas asked. "To prepare humanity for the only future that ensures survival. Evolution through merger with the collective." Thomas leaned forward. "You betrayed your own species. Billions died." Reese's eyes were vacant. "Necessary losses. The weak must be culled so the strong can ascend." "Who leads you?" Anna demanded. "The architect guides us all. He showed us the truth." "And who is the architect?" Thomas pressed. A ghost of a smile crossed Reese's face. "One you all trusted. One of Earth's greatest generals." Eliza interrupted, checking her instruments. "Captain, his neural patterns are destabilizing. The implant is fighting the suppressant." "Reese, what is the convergence?" Thomas asked quickly. "The final phase. The architect is gathering us. Proxima Centauri. The gateway." Reese's body suddenly stiffened, his back arching in pain. "He is preparing the path." Blood began to trickle from Reese's nose and ears. Eliza rushed forward with emergency medical equipment, but it was too late. The implant had triggered some kind of neural failsafe. Reese's last words were barely audible as he died. "You cannot stop what's coming. We are the future." Later, Thomas stood in the ship's meeting room with his team, the star maps of Proxima Centauri displayed on the main screen. "So we have a destination," Anna said. "And a lot of questions," Marcus added. "What's the gateway? Who is the architect?" Thomas studied the map, his expression grim. "Whatever they're planning, it's happening at Proxima Centauri. That's where we're going next." He looked at his team. The hunt for the traitors had taken a darker turn than any of them had expected. This wasn't just about finding collaborators. Something worse was brewing in the shadows of the galaxy. "Set course for Proxima Centauri," he ordered, "and prepare for anything." The UES Vengeance dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a flash of light, emerging near the second planet of Proxima Centauri. Captain Thomas Reed stood on the bridge, looking at the main screen as the planet came into view. Once a thriving, mining colony with over 50,000 people, it was now a dead world. The collective had hit it early in the war and no one had returned since. "Scan the planet," Thomas ordered. "Look for any signs of recent activity." Marcus worked his console, his face lit by the blue glow of the screens. "I'm picking up strange energy readings from the surface, Captain, centered around the old colonial administrative complex. Definitely not natural." "Any ships in orbit?" Anna asked from the tactical station. "None that I can detect," Marcus replied. "But there are some unusual energy distortions that could be masking signatures." Thomas studied the readouts. "We can't risk the Vengeance being spotted. We'll take the shuttle down. Anna, you'll remain in command up here." Anna frowned. "Sir, with respect, I should go with you." "No, Lieutenant. If something happens to us, someone needs to get this information back to Earth." Thomas selected his ground team. Marcus to handle any technical systems they encountered, Dr. Eliza Voss to analyze any collective technology, and 2 security officers, Tanner and Rivera. They armed themselves with weapons effective against both human and collective targets. The shuttle landed a kilometer from the complex to avoid detection. The sky above them was a dull red, the ground bare rock. Nothing lived on the surface anymore. "Radiation levels normal," Eliza said, checking her scanner. "Air is thin but breathable." They moved carefully across the barren landscape, staying low and using the rocky terrain for cover. When they reached the edge of the complex, Thomas held up his hand, signaling the team to stop. The colonial facility had once been impressive, a dome of steel and glass built to house the administrative offices for the planet's mining operations. Now most of the dome was shattered, the buildings within partially collapsed, but lights glowed from below ground level, where the secure areas would have been. "The main entrance is probably watched," Thomas said. We'll use the emergency access shaft. They circled around to a small metal hatch half hidden by fallen debris. Marcus bypassed the old security system, and the hatch slid open with a groan. Of metal. One by one, they climbed down the ladder into darkness. Inside, the air was stale but breathable. Thomas activated his light, illuminating a narrow corridor. Dust covered everything except for a set of footprints leading deeper into the facility. "Someone's been here recently," Tanner whispered, pointing to the tracks. "Multiple people." They followed the footprints through the winding corridors of the underground complex. The further they went, the more signs of recent activity they found: powered equipment, fresh supplies, new security cameras that they carefully avoided. Eventually, they reached a heavy door marked Colonial Archive. The footprints led inside, and faint voices could be heard. "Ready weapons," Thomas whispered. "Remember, we need prisoners for questioning." On his count of 3, Rivera used a breaching charge on the door. It blew inward with a bang, and Thomas led the charge through the smoke. What they found inside stopped them all cold. The large room had been converted into a laboratory of some kind. Along the walls were hundreds of stasis pods, each containing a human body. Medical equipment connected to each pod fed tubes into the occupants, and at the base of each person's skull was the same type of implant they had seen on Reese. "My God," Eliza breathed. "They're converting them." In the center of the room stood several people in medical garb, clearly surprised by the intrusion. Thomas recognized 2 of them from Admiral Porter's files, ascended traitors. "Hands up," Thomas shouted. "You're under arrest for treason against Earth." Instead of surrendering, one of the scientists hit an alarm. Red lights began flashing as security doors slammed shut. From side doors, armed guards rushed in, some human, others clearly modified with collective technology grafted to their bodies. "Take cover," Thomas yelled as energy beams cut through the air. The team scattered, diving behind equipment. Rivera wasn't fast enough. A beam caught him in the chest, and he dropped without a sound. Thomas returned fire, dropping one of the guards. Tanner threw a stun grenade, temporarily disorienting several attackers. Marcus made it to a computer terminal and started downloading data. "Captain," Eliza called from behind a row of stasis pods. "These people are still alive. They're civilians, refugees from the war." "Can you free them?" Thomas asked, firing again to keep the guards pinned down. "Not safely. The process has gone too far for some. Removing them incorrectly would kill them." A new wave of attackers entered from another door, cutting Thomas off from the rest of his team. He rolled behind a large piece of equipment, energy bolts striking all around him. He was trapped with no clear path to his team. From his position, he could see Marcus frantically working at the terminal while Tanner provided covering fire. Eliza was examining the pods, likely looking for a way to safely remove the occupants. Thomas needed to rejoin them, but 3 guards blocked his path. He checked his weapons charge, half depleted already. He wouldn't make it in a direct confrontation. That's when he noticed a service passage behind him. It might circle around to where his team was. He slipped inside just as more guards arrived. The passage was narrow and dark. Thomas moved as quickly as he dared, following the curve of the wall. He heard gunfire behind him, his team still fighting. Then he heard a different sound ahead, footsteps approaching. Thomas pressed himself against the wall, weapon ready. Around the corner came a woman in a military uniform that bore the rank of admiral. Thomas recognized her immediately, though he had thought her dead for years. Admiral Helen Davis had been his mentor when he first joined the fleet. She had disappeared during the Battle of Tau Ceti, her ship reportedly destroyed with all hands. Yet here she stood alive, with the same implant at the base of her skull that marked all the ascended. "Thomas," she said, her voice eerily calm. "I had hoped you wouldn't be the one they sent." "Admiral Davis," he replied, keeping his weapon trained on her. "You're one of them." She didn't try to deny it. "I'm evolved, Thomas. I see things clearly, now." "You betrayed humanity," he said, anger rising in his voice. "People trusted you." I'm trying to save humanity, she replied. The collective showed me the truth. Alone, divided humans will never survive what's coming. The only path forward is evolution, becoming more than we are. By turning people into puppets, those are civilians in there. Volunteers, she said, though her eyes shifted away. Mostly. Some need to be shown the way. Thomas tightened his grip on his weapon. What is the gateway? What are you planning? For a moment, Admiral Davis seemed to consider whether to tell him. Then she smiled slightly. Why not? The gateway is nearly complete. It's a device designed to amplify a signal that will activate dormant neural seeds planted in millions of humans during the war. One broadcast and the architect will have his army of Ascended throughout human territory. Thomas felt cold horror at her words. That's your plan? Mass conversion against people's will? It's evolution, Thomas. You could join us. The architect values your skills. Thomas heard more gunfire from the main room. His team was still fighting. He needed to get back to them. I'd rather die, he said. That can be arranged, Davis replied, reaching for her weapon. Thomas fired first, hitting her in the shoulder. She fell back with a cry of pain, and he ran past her back toward the main room. He burst through the door to find Tanner down, but Marcus and Eliza had managed to free some of the people from the pods, those least affected by the conversion process. Among them was an older man who leaned heavily on Eliza. Captain, Marcus called, I got the data, but we need to leave now. Thomas laid down covering fire as they retreated toward the exit. The man with Eliza stumbled, and Thomas helped support him. Who are you? Thomas asked as they ran. Professor William Turner, the man gasped. Collective technology expert. They took me to help build the gateway. Where is it? Thomas demanded. Epsilon Eridani, Turner replied. In the dead zone, where the war started, they fought their way back to the surface, carrying their wounded and helping the civilians they had managed to rescue. Behind them, explosions rocked the facility as Marcus's parting gift, a computer virus, overloaded the power systems. As the shuttle lifted off, Thomas looked back at the burning complex. They had stopped one conversion center, but according to the data Marcus had stolen, there were more. And somewhere in the dead zone, the gateway neared completion. The hunt would continue. The bridge of the UES Vengeance was silent as Captain Thomas Reed finished his transmission to Earth. 2 weeks had passed since their escape from Proxima Centauri. They had sent their findings through secure channels to the few military leaders they still trusted. The response had been swift. Message received and confirmed, Captain, Marcus said from his station. Task Force Nemesis is officially activated. Thomas nodded, feeling the weight of command grow heavier. No longer would the Vengeance hunt alone. 2 additional ships had been assigned to their mission, the UES Defiant and the UES Harbinger. Together, they would make their final push to stop the Ascended. Captain, Anna called from Tactical, the Defiant and Harbinger have arrived and are taking formation. On the main screen, 2 warships appeared, moving into position alongside the Vengeance. The Defiant was a heavily armed destroyer, while the Harbinger specialized in electronic warfare. Together they formed a powerful combat unit. Open a channel to both ships, Thomas ordered. The faces of 2 captains appeared on the screen. Captain Lisa Reeves of the Defiant was a veteran of the Mars campaign. Captain David Chen of the Harbinger had once served under Thomas during the early days of the war. Welcome to Task Force Nemesis, Thomas said. You've been briefed on our mission. We're heading into the dead zone to find and destroy the gateway before the Ascended can activate it. The dead zone hasn't been approached since the first year of the war, Captain Chen noted. Collective defenses were too strong. And it's where we lost the Third Fleet, added Captain Reeves. 40,000 personnel, no survivors. Thomas nodded grimly. Which is why the Ascended chose it. They think we're afraid to return. He called up the tactical display showing Epsilon Eridani. Professor Turner, now recovering in the Vengeance's medical bay, had provided crucial details about the gateway. Our target is here, Thomas said, highlighting a point in space. According to Professor Turner, The gateway is a massive device capable of broadcasting a signal throughout human space. If activated, it will trigger the neural seeds the collective planted in millions of humans during the war, creating instant ascended loyalists everywhere, Captain Reeves said with disgust. Exactly. We can't let that happen. We jump in, destroy the gateway, and capture the architect if possible. And if it's not possible? Captain Chen asked. Thomas's expression hardened. Then we make sure the traitor doesn't leave the dead zone alive. As they approached the jump point to Epsilon Eridani, Thomas visited Professor Turner in the medical bay. The older man looked better than when they had rescued him, but the trauma of captivity still showed on his face. "How are you feeling, Professor?" Thomas asked. "Better, thank you," Turner replied. "Dr. Voss says the effects of the partial conversion are fading." Thomas sat beside the bed. "We're about to enter the dead zone. Is there anything else you can tell me about what we'll face?" Turner's eyes grew distant. "The architect has gathered most of the ascended there. The facility is well defended, a space station of hybrid human collective. Design, they call it Evolution's Cradle." He shuddered. "I helped build parts of it before I realized what it was for." "And the architect? Did you ever meet him?" "Once," Turner said quietly. "He visited to check on the gateway's progress. The others treated him like a god." "Who is he, Professor?" Turner looked Thomas in the eye. "General Richard Maxwell." Thomas felt like he'd been struck. Maxwell had been Earth's most celebrated military strategist, the hero who planned the defensive actions that saved Earth during the initial collective invasion. "That's not possible," Thomas whispered. "Maxwell died stopping the collective advance at Saturn." "No," Turner said. "He was taken. Converted. He's been working for them from the beginning, Captain. The greatest betrayal of all. The 3 ships of Task Force Nemesis emerged from the jump into the Epsilon Eridani system. Immediately, their sensors picked up the massive energy readings of the gateway. "My God," Anna whispered as the main screen showed their target. It was a space station unlike anything they had seen before, part human design, part collective. It stretched several kilometers in length, with a central dish array pointed toward Earth. Around it orbited defensive platforms and several ascended vessels. "They've spotted us," Marcus reported. "Enemy ships moving to intercept." "All ships, battle stations," Thomas ordered. "Defiant, take point. Harbinger, begin electronic countermeasures. Vengeance will target the station's main defenses." The space around them lit up with weapons fire as the battle began. The Defiant surged forward, its heavy guns tearing through the first wave of ascended ships. The Harbinger released a swarm of drones that confused enemy targeting systems. The Vengeance took heavy fire as it pushed toward the station. Warning alarms blared as systems began to fail. "Shields at 40%, Anna reported. "Hull breaches on decks 5 and 6. "The Harbinger is hit badly," Marcus called out. "They've lost engines." Thomas watched as the Defiant took the brunt of the enemy fire, creating an opening. "This is our chance. Prepare the strike team." Minutes later, Thomas led a team of 12 soldiers in the Vengeance's assault shuttle. They launched toward the station as their ships continued to exchange fire with the ascended fleet. "The Defiant is critically damaged," Anna's voice came through the comm as they approached the station. "Captain Reeves is ordering evacuation." Thomas watched through the shuttle viewport as the Defiant exploded in a brilliant flash of light. He silently vowed that their sacrifice would not be in vain. The shuttle docked at an emergency airlock Marcus had identified. They cut their way inside and were immediately met with resistance. The corridors of the station were a nightmare blend of human and collective technology, with organic-looking components growing from metal walls. Fighting was intense as they pushed toward the central chamber where the gateway controls would be. Thomas lost 4 of his team before they reached the main corridor leading to their target. "Almost. There," Thomas said as they paused to regroup. "Marcus, Eliza, work on disabling the gateway. The rest of us will handle any resistance." They burst into the central chamber, a massive room dominated by control stations surrounding a glowing core. And there, standing at the main console, was General Richard Maxwell. Unlike the other Ascended they had encountered, Maxwell appeared almost normal, until he turned. Half of his face was covered with collective technology, his left eye replaced with a glowing blue implant. "Captain Reed," Maxwell said, his voice still carrying the commanding tone that had once inspired millions. "You're too late. The gateway sequence has already begun." "General Maxwell," Thomas replied, keeping his weapon trained on the man. "Or should I call you the architect?" Maxwell smiled, a disturbing sight with his half-mechanical face. "Titles don't matter now. All that matters is the evolution of our species." "You betrayed everything you swore to protect," Thomas said. "You led the collective to our worlds. Billions died." "Necessary sacrifices," Maxwell replied. "I saw the truth when they first took me at Saturn. Humanity is too weak, too divided, to survive what's coming. The collective showed me the path to our survival, unity through ascension." Behind Maxwell, the gateway core pulsed with increasing energy. Marcus and Eliza were working frantically at a side console trying to stop the broadcast. "Captain," Eliza called, "we can't stop it directly. The systems are locked." Maxwell laughed. "In 3 minutes, the signal will broadcast. Millions of humans with dormant neural seeds will join us. The Ascended will become the majority, and the old humanity will fade away." Thomas raised his weapon. "Not if I stop you first." Maxwell moved with inhuman speed, knocking the weapon from Thomas's hand. Enhanced by collective technology, the general was stronger than any normal human. He grabbed Thomas by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "You can't stop evolution, Captain." As Thomas struggled for breath, Eliza shouted from the console, "I have an idea. The signal pattern. I can invert it." Maxwell turned toward her, momentarily distracted. Thomas broke free and tackled the general. They crashed into a control panel, fighting desperately. "Do it, Eliza!" Thomas shouted as he struggled to hold Maxwell. "It might kill the already Ascended," she warned. "The neural feedback." "Do it now," Thomas ordered. As Maxwell threw Thomas across the room, Eliza completed her modification. The gateway core changed color from blue to red. Maxwell staggered, clutching his head as the inverted signal affected his implants. "What have you done?" He gasped. "Changed your signal," Eliza said. "Instead of creating new Ascended, it's disrupting the neural connections of those already converted." Around them, the other Ascended in the room collapsed, their implants overloading. Maxwell fought against the effect, stumbling toward the controls. "I need to get to Earth," he growled. "This can't be the end." "It is for you," Thomas said, retrieving his weapon. He fired a stun blast that finally brought Maxwell down. The station shuddered as the gateway core began to overload. Warning alarms blared throughout the station. "We need to get out of here," Marcus said. "The whole place is going to blow." Thomas moved to Maxwell's unconscious form. "Bring him. He'll answer for his crimes." They fought their way back to the shuttle, dragging the prisoner with them. As they launched from the dying station, they watched the gateway begin to break apart, its power core creating a miniature sun that consumed the entire structure. The battle was over. The gateway was destroyed. And the Architect. 1 year had passed since the battle at Epsilon Eridani. Captain Thomas Reed stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned UES Phoenix, watching as workers completed the final sections of Earth's reconstructed orbital defense platform. The massive structure gleamed in the sunlight, a symbol of humanity's recovery. "Quite a view, isn't it?" said a familiar voice. Thomas turned to see Lieutenant Anna Wilson, now Captain Wilson, approach. She wore the insignia of her own command on her uniform. "The best view in the system," Thomas agreed. "How's the Vengeance treating you?" Anna smiled. "She's a good ship. We just returned from hunting down an Ascended cell near Alpha Centauri. Small group, but dangerous." Thomas nodded. After the destruction of the gateway, the hunt for remaining Ascended traitors had continued. Some had been captured, others eliminated. The immediate threat had passed, but the work was far from over. "And the neural restoration program?" he asked. "Dr. Voss reports an 87% success rate now," Anna replied. "Her modified signal from the gateway gave us the key to reversing the conversion process for those who weren't too far gone. It had been an unexpected benefit of their mission." Eliza's inverted gateway signal had provided the basis for a treatment that could remove collective implants and restore most ascended to their human consciousness. Thousands had been saved, though many still struggled with the memory of what they had done while under collective influence. "The Admiral is waiting for us," Thomas said, checking the time. "We shouldn't keep him waiting." Admiral James Porter had survived the attack on Artemis Station, though he now used a powered exoskeleton to move. His office in Earth Defense Headquarters overlooked the rebuilt skyline of New Geneva. "Reed Wilson," he greeted them as they entered, right on time. Seated in the office was Marcus, now a commander, and Dr. Eliza Voss, recently appointed head of the Xenobiology Research Institute. Their team reunited. "I'll get straight to the point," Porter said. "You've all seen the long-range scan data." He activated a holographic display showing strange energy patterns at the edge of the galaxy. The readings were unlike anything in human records, swirling distortions in space that defied known physics. "We've been detecting these anomalies for the past 3 months," Porter continued. "They're growing stronger and they're moving toward populated space." "Do we know what they are?" Thomas asked. "No," Porter admitted, "but someone might." The Admiral pressed another button and a security door opened. 2 guards led in a prisoner, General Richard Maxwell, the man once known as the Architect. His collective implants had been removed, leaving scarred tissue on the side of his face. He walked with a slight limp, his once powerful frame now diminished. "General," Thomas said coldly. Maxwell regarded them all with tired eyes. "I'm no longer a general, just a prisoner, a traitor as you call me." "You've asked to speak with Captain Reed," Porter said to Maxwell. "Here he is." Maxwell turned to Thomas. "You think you've won, don't you? Destroyed the gateway, dismantled the Ascended network, reversed the conversions. A great victory for humanity." "We stopped you," Thomas replied simply. Maxwell laughed. A hollow sound. "You've won nothing but time, Captain. The collective was merely the vanguard. They detected what's coming, what I saw in their memories." He pointed to the holographic display showing the strange anomalies. "That is what the collective was fleeing from when they encountered humanity. That is why they sought to convert, rather than simply destroy us. They needed soldiers, resources, new worlds." A chill ran through the room as his words sank in. "You expect us to believe that?" Anna asked skeptically. "The collective was running from something worse?" "Believe what you wish," Maxwell replied. "But I've seen it through their memories. The things that wait in the void between galaxies. The collective called them the Devourers. They don't conquer or convert. They simply consume, breaking down all matter and energy into their base components." Thomas studied the man who had once been Earth's greatest military mind before becoming its worst traitor. Was this just another manipulation? Another lie? "If what you're saying is true," Thomas said carefully, "then why betray humanity? Why not simply warn us?" Maxwell's scarred face twisted in what might have been regret. "Would you have believed me? Without evidence?" The collective offered a solution. Evolution beyond our fragile bodies, unity beyond our endless squabbling. I saw it as the only path to survival. "You chose to decide for all of humanity," Eliza said. "Billions died because of that choice." "Yes," Maxwell acknowledged. "I will carry that burden forever. But the threat is still coming. The question is, what will you do about it?" Later, in the Sentinel Council chamber, Thomas stood before the newly formed leadership group, military and civilian leaders tasked with preparing humanity for potential new threats. Admiral Porter presented the PIIQ, evidence they had gathered, including data cores recovered from Ascended facilities that partially corroborated Maxwell's claims. "The long-range scans show something approaching," Porter concluded. "We don't know if it's what Maxwell described, but we can't ignore the possibility." The council members looked troubled as they reviewed the information. "What do you recommend?" "Admiral?" asked the council chair. Porter turned to Thomas. "Captain Reed has a proposal." Thomas stepped forward. "We need to investigate these anomalies directly. I propose a special exploratory fleet to the galaxy's edge. If there is a threat coming, We need to know what we're facing. And if there is no threat? Asked a counselor. Then humanity will have expanded its knowledge of the universe, Thomas replied. Either way, we win. After much debate, the council approved the mission. The Phoenix would lead a flotilla of 10 ships to the Galactic Rim with Thomas in command. Anna would captain the Vengeance as part of the fleet. 3 days later, Thomas stood on the bridge of the Phoenix as the crew made final preparations for departure. The ship hummed with energy, its powerful engines ready for the long journey. Ahead, Marcus entered the bridge, taking his position at communications. All ships report ready, Captain. Eliza was staying behind to continue her research but had come aboard to see them off. Be careful out there, she told Thomas. Whatever these things are, don't take unnecessary risks. We'll be cautious, Thomas promised. As the Phoenix led the flotilla away from Earth, Thomas thought about everything that had happened since that day on the observation deck of the Vengeance, watching the remains of the collective fleet. The war, the hunt for traitors, the revelation of a possibly greater threat. Humanity had faced extinction twice now and survived. The fleet entered faster than light travel, stars streaking past the viewports as they began their journey to the edge of known space. Thomas received a message from the Vengeance. Anna's face appeared on his screen. Strange readings ahead, Captain. Shall we proceed? Thomas looked out at the stars, thinking of all that humanity had endured, and all that might still lie ahead. The hunt for traitors was ending, but perhaps a new hunt, for knowledge for survival, was just beginning. Always forward, Captain Wilson, he replied. The hunt continues. As the Phoenix raced toward the unknown, Thomas felt not fear, but determination. Whatever waited at the galaxy's edge, humanity would face it together, no longer naive, but still fundamentally human, their greatest strength in a universe of threats.